Good evening, everybody. Everyone give me a wave. I get a little bit nervous up here, so I like to know that there's people down there. My name is Amber. I'm the young adult and student pastor here at St. Paul's. A few things about me. I love Jesus. I love young people. I love McDonald's gherkins. Craig's still on. Yeah. You'll hear the heckling soon. And I love people. I am also a part-time domestic abuse key worker, and it is such a joy to see so many people here. I'm telling you now, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have come out to midnight mass. I'd be in bed or with a glass of wine, so fair play to you guys. But I am so grateful that you're all here today because I love talking about Jesus more than anything else in the world. I love spending time with our fabulous young adults. Big up, and just meeting you guys. And as a pastor and someone who walks alongside people facing pain and hardship, I know that life can often feel extremely heavy. And some seasons leave us feeling completely empty and alone and unsure if light will ever break through. And I know that Christmas is often a time when those feelings increase. And I wonder tonight if any of you here are sitting with this familiar feeling of crushing emptiness. The feeling where grief is sitting really heavily on your chest, where the weight of what you are carrying is making it extremely hard to breathe. And where you can't imagine anything, let alone light, breaking through. And thankfully, if you are feeling that way, this is exactly where the Christmas story begins. The Christmas story does not begin with angels, not with songs, not with amazing lights and familiar traditions that we are all so used to. The Christmas story begins with emptiness, with deep, deep emptiness, an oppressive emptiness, the kind of emptiness that can often convince us that everything is going to stay exactly the same way as it is right now. And it is into that emptiness, not after it lifts, that God speaks. And that bit of scripture that Pippa just read is one of my absolute favorite pieces of scripture ever. I think it paints such a beautiful story of who God is and how much he loves us and cares for us. And Isaiah is a prophet, and a prophet is someone who is called to listen for God's voice and speak it aloud, especially when others cannot hear it for themselves. And in this piece of scripture, Isaiah is talking to the people of Israel in Jerusalem and Judah. And they are a nation that is living under occupation and threats from powerful empires. They are worn down by injustice and fear and exile. And they are longing for rescue. They are longing for God to act. And they're beginning to wonder if the silence meant that God had forgotten them. And I wonder if, as you're sitting here tonight, if you've ever felt like God doesn't hear you, if you've ever felt like God doesn't care. The scripture says the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. It doesn't say will see, it says have seen. And I think this is because God's promises are so certain that the future can be spoken of as if it has already arrived. And then comes the heart of this promise. For unto you a child is born, unto you a son is given. Unto you a child is born, unto you a son is given. Unto you. This isn't a general promise. It's not abstract hope that we get to feel. It is deeply, deeply personal. And when I first read this bit of scripture, I wondered why God would choose a baby, why he would choose someone so innocent and fragile and vulnerable to redeem this whole world. And I think it is because the light that he is talking about in this scripture doesn't rise from human strength or effort. It doesn't come from us coping better or holding it together and pretending like everything is fine. This light comes towards us. Unto you a child is born. Unto you a son is given. And this is great, great news. It means that God does not shout hope from a distance. It means that God steps into the mess. He enters our vulnerability, and he chooses closeness. And darkness is not a thing in itself. Darkness is simply the absence of light. And into that absence, that is where the light comes towards us. And that right there is the mercy of God. Light doesn't need everything to be fixed in order to get in. Light comes through cracks. It has to come through somewhere. And often for us, it is in the very places that we wish were hidden or healed or held together. Those fractures in our lives become the doorway for the light to enter. I want you to take a moment to think, where are the cracks in your life right now? And I love the story of Jesus. I love the nativity story because it isn't sanitized. We often view the nativity story and we soften it. But when you read scripture, and I'm a very creative and I love a bit of imagery. So when I imagine what the nativity story looks like, it is incredibly raw. Mary and Joseph were young, they were poor, they were misunderstood, they were displaced, they must have been exhausted and uncertain, they had nowhere to stay. It's not a tidy arrival. It was extremely fragile. It was extremely risky. And Jesus was born into uncertainty. And yet, this is where God chose to arrive. He didn't arrive when Mary and Joseph had got themselves a hotel room and they'd got everything sorted. He didn't arrive when the conditions were safe. God arrived right in the middle of it. And the promise for me, unto you a child is born. It's not theoretical. It is deeply, deeply personal. Before I came to Weston, I was 21 and I was a student nurse in Oxford. Thought it was my absolute dream. Evidently it was not, because I'm here. But I was a student nurse on placement in an emergency department during COVID, in flu season, all by myself. I was working long hours, I was unpaid, I was exhausted, I was emotionally stretched beyond what I knew how to carry. And one of my shifts went like this. I walked from my student house just praying to God. I was already feeling tired. I was feeling a bit done. And I remember praying, Lord, just let this be a little bit easier. Jesus, just please come. And this is what the shift looked like. I went in and I met with a young man in his 20s who had been in a horrendous car accident. His car had been written off. The passenger had died. And we tried everything we could, and then 25 minutes before he passed away, he asked me if I believed in Jesus. I then went straight from there to another room, to a woman who had randomly suffered a brain bleed. 30 minutes after that, I had to sit with her husband and 3 children to tell them why his wife and her children were not coming home for Christmas. I then, 20 minutes after, went into another room with a moment that has stuck with me forever. I met a woman who was fleeing unimaginable abuse, and that ended with her having a horrific tragedy that reminded me how fragile life can be. And I tried to stay with her through it, and I tried to hold hope where it felt almost impossible. But that moment in my life was absolutely horrendous. I struggled with complex PTSD for 7 months afterwards. My brain had told me that I'd killed 3 people. I couldn't compute between God's truth and my mind. And this is what I learned through that. And I want you to hear this very carefully and very gently. That the baby in the manger is not an answer that will dismiss every bit of pain that we have. He is not a comparison, and he is not a replacement. The baby in the manger is God choosing to come into a world, choosing to break through into that darkness, to a world where babies do die, where grief is unbearable, where trauma marks our body and rewires our minds, where wars take lives, where addiction destroys families, where poverty traps people in cycles that they didn't choose. And the manger tells us this: God does not stay away from our suffering, he enters it. Martin Luther King once said that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And Christmas tells us this, that God's response to the darkness of the world will never be condemnation. It will never be distance. It will never be withdrawal. It will always be love. God sends his light in the form of love. And that love has a name, and it is Jesus. And the nativity isn't sentimental. It is very confrontational because it tells us that God isn't afraid of our darkest realities. When I got to a place where I knew that I could no longer stay in Oxford, my degree had ended, my future had collapsed, I lost my church family, I lost my friends, my identity completely dissolved. I was like, free rent, I'll move back in with my parents. Cheers, Mum. But I came back to Weston, and I came home with no job, I had no degree, I had no clear direction, and I carried such shame and grief and a sense of failure that I couldn't even name at that point. And like Mary and Joseph, I was walking forward with no certainty. I was just surviving. But little did I know that God was already there. And step by step, light began to come in. Through people who welcomed me in this town, through a church family who I didn't have to explain myself to, through healing that came in layers and not lightning bolts, and most importantly for me, through a God who stayed. And in that season of my life, unto me a child was born, unto me a son was given. And I actually love that Jesus wasn't born in a perfect place. He was born on the margins. He was born among the overlooked. He was born among the poor and the vulnerable. Because when we look at Weston and we look at this town, this is a town that knows addiction, it knows poverty, it knows violence, and it knows loss. And yet, this is exactly the kind of place God chooses to come. And I wonder where you find yourself in the nativity story. Are you Mary, carrying something heavy and misunderstood? Are you Joseph, trying to do the right thing whilst quietly holding on to fear? Are you the shepherds, overlooked and ordinary and just going about life, hoping and praying that heaven is going to break in? Are you weary? Are you waiting? Are you wondering if God sees you and cares about you? And I encourage you to think about it this week, because God will speak to you. And if you're not sure where you find yourself in the nativity story, that is absolutely fine, because we often don't need certainty to take a step. We just need curiosity. And one of my favorite things that we do at this church is called an Alpha Course. It is a space to ask open and honest questions and explore faith and discover what it might mean to let the light of the world come closer. It is no pressure. There's no pretending. There's just space to explore and listen and wonder. And when I first started the young adult ministry here, that is the first thing that we did together, was an Alpha Course. And seeing them evolve and grow as humans and step into that curiosity, and looking back to 7 months ago and what amazing people they are now, has been an absolute privilege of my life. And if you're here tonight and you're asking, could there be more than this? That question might be the beginning of light. And on your chairs, you will see that you have got invites. Please do take these with you. Please do invite your family and your friends. Invite the people that you know need a touch of heaven. And just quickly, before I keep going, turn to your neighbor and say Merry Christmas, because it's officially Christmas. I was like really gassed to do that all day, to be the first person to say Merry Christmas. Amazing. Please do take those with you. And I think the reason that it is important specifically at this time is we often get caught up in what the meaning of Christmas is. Don't get me wrong, I love presents. I'm very, very excited to wake up in the morning and open some gifts. But the gift of Christmas is not wrapped in paper. It isn't tied with bows. It is wrapped in flesh. It is given in love. And it is laid gently in a manger. The God who formed every single star, called you by name, and chose to come close enough to be held. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment. I'd like you to think about where the crack in your life is right now. Where are you broken? Is it in your heart? Is it in your mind? Is it in your family? Where do you feel weary or wounded or unseen? And when I come off the stage, we're going to listen to a song that is called "O Come All You Unfaithful." And I can never do this song justice because it is so beautiful. But every single aspect of life, when we are broken, when we have no faith, whether we're stuck in addiction, our families are falling apart, it invites us into the presence of God. And on most of your seats, you will see that you have got some little love hearts. If you don't have one, please do let someone know and we will come and give you one. But these little love hearts are reminders that God's love meets us exactly where we are. And I want you to take a moment and reflect quietly and write down what is broken on one of these hearts. And then as a symbol of bringing it to God, on your way out, or you can come forward now, we'd love for you to stick them to the crosses that we've got at the front as a sign of nailing it to the cross with Jesus. And as you do that, as you hear this song, I'd like for you to pray these 3 words. Please, Jesus, come. Please, Jesus, come. And for some of you, if you've not prayed before, this might just simply sound like, please, Jesus, come into my grief. Please, Jesus, come into my broken heart. Please, Jesus, come into that abuse that no one is seeing. Please, Jesus, come into the scars that run deep. Please, Jesus, come into the fear that I carry. Please, Jesus, come into that relationship where it feels like all hope is lost. Please, Jesus, come. And friends, this evening, God isn't waiting for you to be whole. He's not waiting for you to have it all together. He would love to come into those cracks in your life, into those broken places, into the quiet corners of your hearts that you don't let anybody see. His light cannot be stopped, and his light will flow through the smallest openings, through the tiniest fractures, and it will bring warmth, and it will bring healing, and it will bring hope. Even now, even in your cracks, even in your pain, even in your loneliness, he is coming. His love is one that cannot be contained. It cannot be thwarted. And it is coming straight to you. Unto you, a child is born. Unto you, a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace.